Hi, and welcome back. I'm here with Nicole Barber, and we're going to be talking about lemurs, eye-eyes, and everything you've ever wanted to know about nose picking. So, Nicole, could you just tell us a little bit about the specimen we've got here?
Sure. So what we have here is an eye. It is a type of lemur which they're a very diverse group of primates who are native to Madagascar. And the eye is a particularly unusual lemur. It's a nocturnal primate, and it's very distinctive because of this very distinctive hand it has with its slightly creepy
Yeah.
looking long middle finger.
Yes, yeah, that is quite unique. I mean, how long is that?
It does vary from sort of individual to individual, but in some it is almost 8 centimeters long. So,
Wow, that's impressive. So, yes, what does it actually use that? Why does it need such a long finger?
so eyes have a slightly unusual foraging strategy called percussive foraging.
Okay.
So they use this very long middle finger to look for grubs inside bark. So with that long middle finger, they can kind of tap onto the bark and locate where all those delicious grubs are.
Is that something that any other kind of mammals do? Because that doesn't seem like something I've heard of before.
It is a very unusual feeding strategy for mammals, and requires some particular specializations, hence the very long middle finger and also these kind of rodent-like teeth you can see on the front, which it uses to get into the bark.
Okay, so it uses that to gnaw its way in and then get the stuff food out that it wants from the inside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so kind of do those form part of a whole sort of suite of different adaptations that it uses to live during the nighttime?
Yeah, so generally you find some nocturnal adaptations like larger ears to be able to hear things because the visibility is worse, sometimes slightly larger eyes to get as much light in as possible. So yeah, there's a suite of of adaptations that nocturnal animals sometimes have.
Yes. And then kind of turning away from how it lives in the wild and thinking about what it might be getting up to there. So it's been found nose picking, and I think it was an individual called Carly who was doing that. Is that right?
Yes. So Carly is a female eye who lives at the Duke Lemur Center. And she was observed using that very long middle finger to pick her nose. Um,
And is that something, do we know, as Carly lives in captivity, is that something that might happen in the wild as well, or are we just not sure at the moment?
it's very difficult to say because this has only been observed in captivity, but just because something has only been observed in captivity, it doesn't mean that it doesn't also happen in the wild. They're very elusive, and so to observe something like this in the wild would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I think apart from the eye, there's about 10 or 11 different species of animal, including ourselves, who like to pick our nose. And could you tell me a little bit about why it might be kind of so widespread?
It's very difficult to say why we've seen this behavior. So, yeah, as you said, it's been observed in 11, 12, including us,
Yeah.
different primate species, both in captivity and in the wild.
Okay.
So, we can't really pin down a particular reason why it might occur. It could just be that it's kind of uncomfortable to have dried mucus in there
Yeah.
and you want to remove it. But there have been a few studies that have suggested there might be some kind of health benefit to doing it, whether it's getting rid of cavities, whether it's kind of boosting your immune system. But it's really not well studied, which is why we don't have a particular reason that this might be happening.
Yes. And it's not just fingers, is it? It's that in some animals, like capuchins, for instance, they use sticks to help pick their nose. Kind of, could it have something to do with sort of being good at manipulating things?
Yeah, interestingly, generally the primates that seem to have better manipulative skills, where that's kind of, I mean, we are particularly good at using tools, but there are
Yeah.
several other primates that have been seen using tools. So primates with those kind of manipulation skills seem to be the ones that have been observed exhibiting this behavior.
Yeah. And is that something where that might help tell us a little bit more about how either manipulation of tools or just the evolution of mammals in general has kind of happened?
In terms manipulation of tools, how it's happened. I think it's really interesting that you kind of see a conflation of those two different behaviors. I mean, tool use tends to be, I mean, we have seen non-mammals using tools on
Yes.
occasion, but it is something that we see a lot in mammals and specifically a lot in primates. So it's kind of a fairly specific behavior. So yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that something that might not seem immediately relevant, that these two behaviors are almost kind of linked.
Obviously, the eye does nose picking, but unfortunately, while we find it fascinating, unfortunately, it's not always doing so well in the wild. So, is there anything we can do to help conserve the eye and other lemurs?
Absolutely. So, given they are so vulnerable to habitat destruction, I think it's really important to, first of all, make people aware of the problem, and also efforts into conserving those kind of environments in which they live. And given their environments are shrinking into kind of smaller and smaller patches, it makes it really hard for those populations to maintain themselves. So, conserving not just patches here and there, but larger areas of habitats in which they can live.
Do you pick your nose? Or do you turn your nose up at that kind of thing? Either way, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more surprising science content, and take a nose at our social channels for more from the Natural History Museum.